Okay. Book 1, The Book of Beginnings, Canto 4, Secret Knowledge, page number 55. A consciousness that knows not its own truth, a vagrant hunter,
Vagrant.
a vagrant, a,
No, no, no. Vagrant.
a vagrant, a vagrant hunter of misleading dawns between the being's dark and luminous ends, moves here in a half light that seems the whole, an interregnum in
Yes,
reality.
correct.
How is
Interregnum.
interregnum in reality? Cuts off the integral thought, the total
Yes,
power.
but you don't drop your voice on reality because the next line completes the thought. So an interregnum in reality cuts off the integral thought.
Okay. An interregnum in reality cuts off the integral thought,
Good.
the total power. It circles or stands in a vague interspace, doubtful of its beginning and its close, or runs upon a road that has no end. Far from the original dusk, the final flame, in some huge void inconscience it lives, like a thought persisting in wide emptiness.
Oh, that needs some looking into. Basically, Sri Aurobindo is speaking of this consciousness that's a very strange thing. It moves here
Mm-hmm.
in the on the earth in us
Mm-hmm.
in a half light
Yeah.
that seems everything,
Mm.
but it's a vagrant. You know what a vagrant is? Someone who's a vagrant. I can get my book also.
Lexicon, yeah.
A vagrant hunter, and that's an important word. So I want to give you correct. Okay.
The dictionary says more like something unsettled, like not a person without a settled um,
Yeah,
home or
moving.
something.
I have two definitions:
Uh-huh.
wandering from place to place.
Okay, like a nomad.
Vagrant hunter, you see, of
Uh-huh.
misleading dawns. Interesting. The second one is figurative, moving in an erratic fashion without aim or purpose.
Hmm.
So, this vagrant hunter of misleading dawns, uh, what does it mean? It moves between the being's dark and luminous ends.
Hmm.
And yet, it's a half light that seems the whole. So the dawns are not really true dawns.
Hmm.
This whole thing is a kind of when you were younger, and when I was younger, we were a bit wild. And we had a consciousness, and we thought we were something. We felt we were something, but that consciousness did not know its own truth.
Hmm.
Only now we're beginning to open
Hmm.
to that consciousness, to know who we are, to begin to know. Now, if if we don't know, then it moves in a half light that seems everything.
Hmm.
And when I was a kid, I thought it seemed everything too,
Hmm.
but
And
it
what
isn't.
does interregnum mean?
Well, I can give you that. It's a very fine, very good word. Interregnum. Interregnum is any pause or interruption
Hmm.
in continuity. So
Okay.
this pause in reality,
Hmm.
what does it do? It cuts off the
Okay.
integral thought and the total power.
Hmm.
It circles or stands in a vague interspace, doubtful even of its beginning and its end,
Hmm.
or it runs upon a road that has no end, and that is far from the original dusk, the final flame, and it moves, it lives in some empty inconscience.
Hmm.
And Sunday I read a lot, not a lot, but something of Sri Aurobindo on the inconscient, because it's a very, very important word.
Hmm.
Inconscience, I'll give you from the Life Divine. The inconscience is an inverse reproduction of the supreme superconscience. It has the same absoluteness of being and automatic action, but in a vast, involved trance. It is being lost in itself, plunged in its own abyss of infinity. Wow.
Hmm.
So we see what this inconscience really is. And we live in that most of the time until we begin to wake up.
Hmm.
Until we are touched by something. Oh, it could be anything that could awaken us. It could be a beautiful flower. It could be a dream. It could be a marvelous sunrise or sunset.
Hmm.
But when it's the Divine Mother, then we are really opened.
Hmm.
Like the clamshell is opened.
Hmm.
We're really opened. And the Divine Mother has touched you.
Hmm.
So now, any questions?
No, nothing more.
Okay, so you can continue. Now, Sri Aurobindo very often likes to use as if
Mm-hmm.
or as when.
Yeah, in this page itself, I see like 2 or 3 times just at a glance.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's at least 3 times, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And why does he do that? Because he doesn't want us to feel that everything is final.
Hmm.
He will lead us eventually to that finality.
Hmm.
Right now, he's taking us gently
Hmm.
through an understanding of what evolution is, what our purpose is in life. And that's why he uses those things. And by the time we get to the end of the page, he tells us what we have to do.
Hmm.
So begin there. As if an unintelligible phrase.
As if an unintelligible phrase suggested a million renderings to the mind. It lends a
Now, why did you drop your voice on mind?
okay.
Suggested a million renderings to
Renderings to the
the mind.
mind. It lends a purport. How is it pronounced?
Purport.
Purport. It lends a purport to a random world, a conjuncture leaning
Conjecture.
conjecture, a conjecture leaning upon doubtful proofs, a message misunderstood, a thought confused, missing its aim is all that it can speak, or a fragment of the universal word.
So you're reading much better. You're already making great progress. I must say that.
Thank you.
So, as if an unintelligible phrase. So it's not understandable at all.
Hmm.
That suggests a million renderings to the mind. Oh, this phrase suggests a million renderings to the mind.
Hmm.
And it lends a reason, a purport, a reason to a random world.
Hmm.
And it's a conjecture. It's just a conjecture. It's just a guess.
Hmm.
Leaning upon doubtful proofs. Well, this is science, you see.
Yeah.
Science finds out more and more about the universe, but never touches the soul as yet.
Hmm.
Recently, science has agreed that there is a consciousness at work in the world.
Hmm.
But they won't use the name soul as yet, or psychic being.
Yeah. So
But they are
is he calling this unintelligible phrase or this million renderings in association with the previous use of inconscient? Like, is it
exactly,
because it is okay?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And so, uh, missing its aim is all that it can speak. So, or a fragment of the universal word. And what are we all in our minds but a fragment of the universal word?
Yeah.
Very, very, very few have touched higher than the higher mind, or the illumined mind, or
Mm.
the intuitive mind. And almost none, with very few exceptions, have gone into the overmind,
Mm.
and one or two just touching the supermind.
Yeah. And also, this sentences that he's speaking very much describes us or our current human condition also, because a thought confused or missing its aim is all that we can speak. How humans go on with what has not been achieved or what is. I mean, we're never grateful or thanking the divine for what has happened. Instead, we are going on with how one is not fulfilled in one's aim, or how one is not satisfied with the other, or it's, yeah, it is always coming out of missings and
So
confusion, misunderstandings.
we have all these things like nihilism,
Mm.
and all these isms
Mm-hmm.
that formulates a whole philosophy of nothing:
Mm-hmm.
existentialism,
Mm.
nihilism,
Mm.
communism.
Mm.
They have an idea and they blow it up into something that's virtually useless.
Mm-hmm.
So carry on.
Yeah. It leaves two giant letters void of sense, while
Void.
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 It leaves two giant letters void of sense, while without sanction turns the middle sign, carrying an enigmatic universe, as if a present without future or past, repeating the same revolution's whirl, turned on its axis in its own inane.
Wow. So
Thus,
that is powerful, because two giant letters void of sense says to me it's the alpha and the omega, A and Z.
okay.
But they're void of sense. They make no sense,
Uh-huh.
because without any sanction, that middle sign, which is, who knows what that middle sign is? Perhaps the divine,
Mm.
or 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 the symbol of eternity. It
And
can be any.
why do you say the two giant letters can be alpha and omega? What does it symbolize, or like what great meaning do they hold?
Well, everything is contained between alpha and omega, A to Z.
Okay.
Everything's contained within that. The two
Okay.
giant letters.
Okay.
You could say the creation and the ultimate fulfillment.
Okay.
Between that, we have between that we have um, an enigmatic universe is carried without sanction. This middle sign, as if a present without future or past. So you see, we have the past, the present, and
Mm-hmm.
the future. We can see it that way also. two giant letters, past,
Yeah. And the future.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which we don't see.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and they repeat the same revolutions whirl. We talked about the wheel again.
Uh-huh.
Same whirl of
Well,
revolution,
yeah.
revolving
Yeah.
whirl. But it turns on an axis in its own inane. Inane is another word that Sri Aurobindo uses very frequently, and I
Okay.
have to give you his definition of that because that's very important. Okay, inane. Inane. Something that is empty or void, especially the void of infinite space. Wow. Something that is empty or void, especially the void of infinite space. So it turns in its axis. It continuously is revolving in a whirl. And it carries this enigmatic, we know what enigma is. It's a puzzle.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
this puzzling universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then he continues, thus is the meaning of creation veiled. It's veiled. Huh?
Yeah.
And I've told you, I think before, I've quoted his beautiful statement, a veil behind the heart, a lid over the mind, keep us from the divine. Love and devotion rend the veil, and in the quietude of the mind, the lid thins and vanishes. You can continue.
Yeah. Thus is the meaning of creation veiled, for without context reads the cosmic page.
Let's do that sentence again, those two sentences again. You can do better because you have to get the feeling of it.
Okay.
Thus
is the meaning of creation veiled, for without context reads the cosmic page. Its signs stare at us like an unknown script, as if appeared screened by a foreign tongue, or code of splendor signs without a key, a portion of a parable sublime.
carry on.
It wears to the perishable creature's eyes, it wears to the perishable creature's eyes the grandeur of a useless miracle, wasting itself that it may last a while, a river that can never find its sea. It runs through life and death on an edge of time. A fire in the night is at it, a fire in the night is its mighty action's blaze.
So again, he's continuing this whole passage that there's no context to anything.
Yeah.
And the meaning, therefore, of creation is veiled, it's hidden.
Yeah.
Its signs stare at us, but they're like an unknown script. And if appearing screened by a foreign tongue that we can't understand, or a code of splendor signs, but there's no key.
Yeah.
A portion of a parable sublime. You know, a parable is a very interesting thing because Christ used it a lot. He spoke in parables to teach people because a parable is much simpler to understand. I'll give you a parable from Satprem.
Okay.
He speaks of a king who was so egotistical, he asks his monks, who is greater, me or God? And they're all frightened and concerned because they know what will happen if they say God is greater. And the old monk says to them, I'll speak with him tomorrow. Don't be concerned. So the next day they go before the king. And he says, yes, what is your answer? And the old man says, sir, you are greater than God, because you can banish us from your kingdom, where God is everywhere, and we cannot go any place without him. So he answers the king feels great, and the truth comes out that God is in all of us.
Yeah.
We can't go out of God. None of us can go out of God.
Yeah.
You have to remember that we are, and I will be doing that this week in my weekly talk. We are the divine. And this is what we're getting to in Savitri now. So we're perishable creatures, obviously. And to our eyes, this grandeur of life seems a useless miracle that wastes itself so it can last a while.
Yeah.
And
it's a sea it's a river which cannot find its end to the sea.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Running through life and death on an edge of time. A fire in the night is its mighty action's blaze. And now he begins this great passage, and I'll ask you to read till the next to the third line of 57.
Okay. So
this is our deepest need.
So until now, he has been speaking it everything from the eye of the inconscient.
Yes, he's telling us what we really are.
Yeah.
And what we really know, which is nothing.
Yeah.
And that we're not aware of who we are.
Yeah.
And then he tells us what our need is.
Yeah. Okay. This is our deepest need, to join once more what now is parted, opposite and twain, remote in sovereign spheres. Sovereign.
Remote in sovereign
spheres that never meet, or fronting like far poles of night and day. We must fill the immense lacuna we have made, re-wed the closed finite's lonely consonant with the open vowels of infinity. A hyphen must connect matter and mind. The narrow
isthmus
of the ascending soul. We must renew the secret bond in things. Our hearts recall the lost divine idea. Reconstitute the perfect world, unite. Reconstitute the perfect word, unite. The Alpha and the Omega in one sound. Then shall the spirit and nature be at one.
So you see, we were correct when we were saying Alpha and Omega. Past, present, and future. Everything contained from A to Z. So now he says, what is our deepest need? That we have to join what is now parted, and opposite even, and twain. Now, twain is interesting because the mind sees everything in terms of duality. Good and bad. Love and hate. Light and dark. Happy and sad. So that's twain.
Yeah.
And he wants us to fill that immense lacuna. That's a huge gap. We have made a huge lacuna in life. And what do we have to do? We have to re-wed the closed finite's lonely consonant with the open vowels of infinity. Look at how he uses these words. We have consonant.
Yeah.
We have vowels. We have hyphen.
Yeah.
It's so, if you go deeply, it's just so marvelous. Oh, okay. A hyphen must connect matter and mind. Mind is said to have made matter conscious.
Hmm.
That matter was totally inconscient prior
Mhm.
to mind.
Hmm.
But we need this hyphen that has to connect matter and mind. The narrow
Mhm.
isthmus, and isthmus is a little island off a little. It's not an island. It's a patch of land that extends from an island.
Okay.
Even connect two islands, an isthmus.
Oh, okay.
It's the soil, you know, and
Uh-huh.
so we have the ascending soul. There's a narrow isthmus. I'll
Uh-huh.
give you a full definition of it. A narrow strip of land bordered on both sides by water, connecting two larger bodies of land.
Hmm.
Just what I said. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we're clear. So, and we have to renew, it's such a beautiful line, renew the sacred bond in things.
Hmm.
When today on my Facebook page yesterday, the wind was very strong, and yet I had to go out and photograph some of these flowers for people. And because I have such an audience now, hundreds of people watch this every day.
Okay.
And I feel that I should bring this beauty to them as often as I can.
Hmm.
And so I went out and I thanked these flowers. I always thank them.
Hmm.
I praise their beauty. They hear me.
Yeah.
They hear me. They understand how much I love them, as the birds do. Oh, I raised so many bluebirds this year.
Hmm.
And now I have 3 families of red-breasted grosbeaks who are at the feeders every day. And this secret bond in things,
Hmm.
we have to renew that.
Hmm.
Our hearts have to recall the lost divine idea. What is the lost divine idea? It is the union,
Hmm.
God.
Yeah.
We have to reconstitute the perfect word. I would say the perfect word is Om.
Hmm.
We have to reconstitute the perfect word, unite the alpha and the omega in one sound. Om would unite them in one sound.
Hmm. Actually, when we were earlier talking about the two giant letters, the word that came to me was Om. But then I recognized that only in English we write it as two letters, but in Sanskrit it is just one letter. So, I mean,
Mhm.
one word. Yeah.
And many people write it AUM.
Hmm.
And they say that the ah is the first sound the child makes when it comes out of its mother.
Uh-huh.
And is the final sound that the soul makes when it's leaving.
Okay.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Very interesting. So,
But how has Sri Aurobindo mother used the Om? They use it with the OM or they use it with AUM?
Sri Aurobindo used it once as AUM, and after that he uses it only as OM.
OM. Okay.
Not uses the actual Sanskrit.
Sanskrit.
And
Okay.
she writes that. She says Om is the signature of the Lord.
Okay.
And when we sound the word Om, it is the Lord.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Only when we have reconstituted that perfect word, united the A and the Z in one sound, then shall the spirit and nature be at one.
One.
So we've had a very busy morning.
Mm-hmm.
very intense, a page and a few lines, and more than that, actually. You're doing very well, very well.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying with it.
Thank
It
you.
will be the most important aspect of your inner progress.
Mm.
To go deeply into Savitri. Everything is there that's needed for sadhana. Many people don't realize that, but everything is there.
Okay.
And Mother says it very clearly.
Okay.
Okay. No.